Never miss another strange story. Subscribe and hit the bell. Sit back and get comfortable. I have a few stories to share with you.
He was an unpleasant man with dark secrets. Ron didn't respond to or read most emails. But this one broke through the haze of drugs and alcohol, catching his bleary eye. $1,000 to spend the night in a haunted house. Make it through 8 rooms of terror and the money is yours. No questions asked. You read that right, Ron. Cypher Entertainment will pay you 10 crisp Ben Franklins to beta test our new Halloween spook house. Be at the corner of 10th and Strip 9 at midnight next Tuesday and see if you have what it takes. Signed, Luther Cypher, Cypher Entertainment. The late fall chill seeped into his tattered army surplus coat as he stood at the corner of 10th and Strip 9, thinking of ways to spend his money. He had visions of drugs and women, lots of both. A sleek black limousine appeared around the corner and flashed high beams. A door popped open and he folded his lanky frame into the plush back seat.
Nice wheels,
he said. There was no response from the smoke glass divider.
Whatever, pisshat,
he said, opening one of the iced beers on display in the back seat.
I could get used to this shit,
he thought. 10 minutes later, the limo pulled up in front of an old Victorian house on the far side of town. The door popped open again and he slid out into the fog.
Have yourself a nice evening, pisshat.
Up the nondescript stairs and into the dusty smelling foyer, a door with the number 1 on it immediately appeared to his right. And here we go, he thought. The first room was your standard Halloween house fare. Mannequins and fake blood. A towering lunatic with a chainsaw and canned horror movie sounds over the loudspeaker. Nothing surprising, he pushed through the door marked 2 and entered the darkened room. Immediately, his nostrils were assailed by the thick smell of rot and corruption. Something small and wrapped in bandages lay unmoving in the corner. Something vaguely familiar. He gagged and stumbled through the 3rd door. He found himself in an old apartment, the one he had shared with Beth and little Jimmy. Beth laid slumped in the ratty recliner, a syringe in her arm. Jimmy was cold and turning green, half out of his crib. He lunged for Jimmy, moved to help him, even as he knew the baby was far beyond help, and watched in horror as the crib dissolved and became another door, marked with the number 4. The next 4 rooms were a whirling blur of crying infants, terrible winged creatures that clutched at his clothes, ripped his flesh, and nauseating huge syringes that stabbed at his eyes. Finally, he came upon the door marked 8.
Finally,
he thought. He barely had any strength to push through.
The money, all that money.
As he pushed through the door and entered what lay beyond, the number 8 slowly turned on its side and stopped. Infinity. I had always thought that I was adopted, but Mother and James He refused to be called father, by the way. Told me that I was their little miracle. It wasn't until a bleak morning in May that I was finally bored enough to read the side of a milk carton on our rickety breakfast table. Amanda Price, age 6 when abducted, would now be 15 years old. She was last seen wearing a white t-shirt and purple overalls. If you have any information as to the whereabouts of Amanda Price, please call. I dropped the carton. Milk came flying out in every direction, leaving the room coated in the beverage. I knew I was Amanda. I had to be. I had never felt like a Melissa. I had never seen any photo of mother pregnant, or a baby book reporting all of my milestones. James always brought me up in fights against mother. The room spun, and I let the creeping darkness of unconsciousness take me. When I awoke, I scribbled down the phone number on the spilled jug on my arm, wiped up the mess with a paper towel, and headed on my way to school. There was a payphone outside the main office, and I could have some privacy. I tried to explain the situation to the woefully unprepared man on the other end of the line. He offered to pick me up from school so he could take me to my real parents. As someone who never fit in with my family, this was a dream come true. It wasn't until I was back in his shed, shackled and beaten, that I noticed his printer. It was large enough that he could print whatever he wanted to on cardboard. His job as a grocery clerk allowed him to plant whatever images he pleased on the milk cartons. It is only now, as I see my reflection in his knife, that I realize just how much I look like my mother. When I met Jeremy, he was a mess, an endearing mess. In truth, he was basically a hoarder, with mounds of hardcover books where furniture should go, and shoeboxes full of photos from family reunions he hadn't especially enjoyed. He just couldn't part with things, which was sweet in a way, but obnoxious as hell whenever we tried moving from one apartment to another and had to spend a full week repacking his ridiculous DVD collection. We got older and got married, and this stuff just kept growing and growing, until eventually it became a problem we couldn't ignore anymore. We had a baby, a beautiful boy named Harrison, and the towers of stuff became too stressful for me. Our home was dangerous, and I was scared. Jeremy understood. He's always been empathetic and kind, just flawed in this one silly way. Still, I admit I was surprised that first day when Harrison and I came back from the park and there was a noticeable gap in the corner of the house. "Where are your CDs?" I asked.
Digitalize them,
said Jeremy, beaming ear to ear. Stacks and piles of mountains of old CDs reduced to invisible data.
I'll do the books next.
He said. He did, and suddenly it felt like our house was twice as big. It felt almost empty. I never thought to ask about the process. Frankly, I wasn't interested. But the results were incredible. Bit by bit, Jeremy pared down our lives, reducing the physical with the digital. We weren't cramped anymore. We were practically Spartan, torn down to the bare essentials, and everything captured under glass, just a button press away. But then one day, I came home and there was an odd quiet in the house. It took me a moment to realize what was missing. Honey? Where's Harrison? I'll always remember Jeremy's face then. He looked so proud and so serene, like he understood something no one else could or ever would. Rather than respond, he held up a tablet. I thought he was showing me a video at first. It was Harrison on a blanket in a bright room, smiling and laughing. But I didn't recognize the blanket or the room, and Harrison seemed to flicker and stutter like he was buffering.
Pretty great, right?
Said Jeremy.
Barely takes up any space this way.
You'd think I would have killed Jeremy then. I wanted to. I really did. But something held me back. I guess it was maternal instinct. Instead, we made a deal. And honestly, it's not so bad down here. At least I have my son, who smiles and laughs, and smiles and laughs, and cannot be touched, and will never grow old. A digital baby in a digital room, forever watched by a digital mother, crying digital tears. And we hardly take up any space at all. Since a very young age, I've occasionally heard this ringing sort of sound in my head. It's a bit like a church bell, though not quite as loud or penetrating a sound. The best way I could describe it is a faint, almost hum-like, in my head. A lot like something you would hear in an old school Zelda game. After some time, I deciphered that I would hear this noise in the event that I was doing something for the last time. Seeing something unique, saying something unique, watching a terrible movie and knowing I'd never watch it again. If I'd say a silly word that doesn't exist, sure enough I would hear, knowing I'd never say that exact word again. At first, it was quite annoying. I would hear it as I visit a new place, as I'd never see any of these strangers again. Fortunately, with some practice and effort, I was able to drown out these rings in favor of those that tend to be louder, denoting a more impactful last time event. As I grew up, I began to hate this curse and quickly fell into depression, saying goodbye to my friends at graduation, only to be inundated with knowing we'd all go our separate ways and never speak again. I'll never forget there. I heard as I say goodbye to my father for the last time, seconds before he peacefully passed away. Not to mention the numerous first dates I've been on, hearing as we finish up the night. This has been years, though. With the help of my beautiful wife and daughter, I've managed to turn the ringing into something positive. I decided to quit my drinking habit, and after many harsh months, I finally heard that as I took my last shot of whiskey. I recently had a Big Mac, only to hear as I put it down, and I've since dropped several pounds. My wife is my biggest supporter, and thus far, the only person I've trusted to tell about this secret. My wife and kid are leaving to spend some much needed quality time together soon.
I love you.
I tell them as they're heading out the door.